Okay.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the Washington Street Collaborative Work Group. The meeting is open at 11:01 a.m. We're convening an open session, and do you want me to open the agenda?
We've never really
We've never done it
it.
before.
No.
Okay. And we're going to begin with public comment.
Doesn't look like
Is there-
everyone from the public is here. But we
Okay.
do have the response to Mr.
Yep.
Connick's. I don't know if we
Yes.
want to read that
I think
or.
we probably should.
Okay.
Right? So it appears that there's nobody from the public. Matt P is actually joining us, which is excellent. There's nobody from the public for public comment. But we do have a response from a question from Mr. Connick at the last meeting that Leah will read now.
Yes. So this is also in the packet as well. I'll reread the questions from Mr. Connick because it's been about a month or so.
Yes.
So he sent an email on June 11th, 2025. It said, "Good afternoon, Ms. Hill. Unfortunately, I will not be on island this Friday. However, I have a few questions. My direct questions are, will a site plan review be presented? Question 2, has the Army Corps of Engineers been notified? Question 3, will the waterfront engineering scope take into consideration Chapter 139, especially the scenic exemption section?" He goes on to say, "Many people have contacted me concerning interference with the quote unquote best view of the harbor when driving down Francis Street. Also, will there be cost estimates along with the new project schedule? Thank you for your kind consideration, respectively, Jerry Connick." So the response to that is this project has not yet entered a formal design phase. As the project advances, a site plan review may be completed and made available in accordance with the permitting requirements. It is standard practice for the town and land bank to meet with all relevant permitting agencies, including the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, if applicable, during the pre-permitting phases to gather input based on their regulatory requirements. The design scope will take into consideration all applicable laws and regulations, including Chapter 139 of the Nantucket Code. We're also aware of concerns expressed by residents regarding potential interference with harbor views from Francis Street. For that reason, this winter, wooden stakes were put at the project site at the specific design height so that the public can gain a sense of the height and how water views may or may not be impacted, depending on where one is. The stakes remain at the site today. Such concerns will be considered during the public engagement and design review process. In addition, cost estimates and a project timeline will be developed and shared with the public as the project progresses into formal design. The town and land bank are committed to obtaining all necessary permits and following all required application and public notice procedures.
Thank you very much, Leah. I believe if we have no additional public comment or questions, we can move on to minutes. And I would like to approve the meeting minutes from December 20th, 2024 and January 10th, 2025. Has everyone had a chance to review those and receive them? Okay. So I would like to do a roll call vote and to approve those minutes. Alan?
Aye.
Okay, I'm gonna go around the room this way. So Nat?
Aye.
See, Malcolm, you were not.
I know.
Voted, right?
Yes.
Aye. Okay. So we have that approval, and now we are ready to move on to the Francis Street Beach Improvement Project. And we're gonna start with the recap of the virtual open house number 2, and I believe this is when I turn it over to Laura.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Everyone seeing the presentation okay? Great.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have a few things in our presentation today. We will recap open house number 2, It's been a little while, so just reminding ourselves where we were and what feedback we received. We also have a revised schedule and a walkthrough of the revisions that were made to the escape team scope since we last convened. And then we'll pass it over to Todd at PAR, who can talk in more detail about the waterfront structural engineering scope that's been developed. So starting with open house number 2, it was back in January, as you remember, and what you're going to see here includes a synthesis both of the feedback we received in those 2 meetings that we convened virtually, as well as the responses to a digital feedback form that was sent out, and we received a good number of responses. So just a reminder of couple of the key points that were shared at those community workshops. First, really taking a look at the flood risk that we anticipate at Washington Street. You can see within our site boundary here in the dashed pink, there are 2 of the major flood pathways that are anticipated to impact Washington Street over time. You can see this middle blue is that anticipated 2050 mean high water, or sort of a daily high tide event. So the intention of this project is to be a first phase of beginning to address the flooding that we sometimes already see and anticipate increasingly as high tide flooding in the future. With the working group and the staff and the community, we've outlined a number of project goals for this project, and they fall into 3 categories. In terms of environmental goals, we're looking at improving the capacity, excuse me, of natural ecosystems to adapt to sea level rise and reduce adverse impacts, and to be able to absorb, buffer, and manage water that impacts the site in Washington Street. Social goals around reducing flood risk to cultural and community assets, creating public and universally accessible waterfront experiences for the community, and engaging in dialogue with the community members about climate risks and the adaptation pathways. So that's what this open house process was a part of. And then lastly, in terms of operational goals, we're looking to reduce the flood risk to sustain the long-term use of Washington Street as a critical transportation corridor for the island, enhancing multimodal transportation infrastructure that includes bikes, pedestrians, transit, as well as cars, and then ensuring that through this process we develop solutions that are feasible, adaptable, maintainable, permittable, and that we have a clear understanding and communicate that understanding of the economic benefits and how those weigh together with the project costs that we anticipate. So that's just really the foundation. As you remember, in the community meeting, we shared 2 potential alternatives that could begin to meet those goals. And so you see 2 different sort of formal geometries that advance, prior plans that were developed. So the one on the left, we called the dune swoop. This was a more sort of curvilinear organic form with a boardwalk that connects Washington Street up over a dune and back down to the waterfront. And it's, in both cases, this would be adaptable to future conditions where you could, build it up further if it was necessary. And then alternative 2 was called the beach overlook. This one was more of an angular, sort of picking up on the language of the piers and the Easy Street Park, with a little bit more space for sort of seating bump outs and gathering, and essentially achieving the same dune elevation, but configuring the occupiable space in slightly different ways. We engaged community members to get their feedback in a couple of different ways. We had what was called Mentimeter, which was an interactive sort of polling process where people could submit their responses live. We also had breakout groups where we got together and spoke in smaller groups with imagery and gathered specific feedback and enabled community members to speak with each other about their ideas. And then we also had the online feedback form and the materials posted online for those who couldn't attend the meeting or wanted more time with the material. So this was interesting. We asked people to share their priorities for the space based on those goals that I shared earlier. And so The top goal that was supported by the community was reducing flood risk to sustain the long-term use of Washington Street, improving the natural systems, managing water, and creating universally accessible spaces were all high on the list as well. And so you can see sort of how those priorities shook out. And just a little bit more detailed graphics on the two different alternatives. So this is the dune swoop with a few images of what this could look like. In all cases, you see a pink dashed line, which would be that high point of the dune. And so essentially we are in both cases creating a universally accessible, ADA accessible pathway that goes from the elevation of Washington Street here at about 4.5 up to the top of that dune structure at 9 and then back down to meet the beach. And so that's done in a way that is not requiring handrails. It's at a essentially a 5% slope in both cases, but just with different forms. And then on the inland side, we know it's important that as we buffer water at the coastal edge, that we also need to be thinking about managing water inland. So this works together with potential future stormwater improvements happening on the inland sites that are a part of the project, as well as parking lot improvements that can happen, both to optimize parking and to create stormwater opportunities at the Saltmarsh Center parking lot. So we heard a lot of great comments of feedback about each of the alternatives. I won't read all of these, but I believe they're in your packet. We have a kind of a summary here. Maybe I'll just read the high level. So people tended to like the more natural organic form, liked having a lot of space for native planting, integrated seating, natural materials. There was support for feeling that this matched the Nantucket aesthetic and that the functionality worked well. Changes or concerns about this alternative were, we heard earlier, concerns about blocking sight lines. Some people thought it didn't fit the Nantucket aesthetic. There were some concerns about the way that flood protection was happening. Wanting to ensure that we maintained kayak access and storage, since that's an important part of the site today. Potentially increasing accessibility and the places where those paths connected up and over the dune was something that came up, as well as beach erosion management. I think this is what I just said, so I won't read that again. And then for the beach overlook, this one that was a little bit more angular, more pulling from the kind of language that we see at the Easy Street Park today. And you know, the sort of furnishings could also align with that. We heard that people liked that this one had a little bit more beach area than the alternative. There was more seating and places to gather, increased accessibility, and the sort of maritime aesthetic. Concerns were that there might be too much boardwalk or paved space in this. They thought angles perhaps could be softened, and that there could be more seating, increasing access and connectivity. And that's the summary, which I believe, again, you have in your packet if you want to dive into. So, you know, the key takeaways, there were some concerns or questions that came up that related to any, you know, both of the schemes more generally. And these were around managing stormwater flooding and in rising groundwater levels, wanting to ensure longevity of the design and adaptability with the future, wanting to ensure we have a good strategy for both planting and erosion maintenance, which I will mention is a part of our scope to provide a maintenance roadmap for this design, ADA accessibility, again, kayak access, and then some concerns about whether bike traffic was appropriate in this location. And so I think this is a helpful summary just to see how appealing was each alternative to you. It wasn't a vote, but just people ranked on a scale of 1 to 5. How appealing is it to you? And the dune swoop came in slightly higher at 3.58 with the beach overlook at 3.15. And again, this is a synthesis both of what we heard in the meeting and the online forms that were submitted. So that's the summary of the engagement. I don't know if there are any questions or comments before we move to the next topic.
I just want to say, you're doing a great job so far,
Thanks, Nat.
my opinion. I just,
Appreciate
we
it.
can save, I think maybe we just save it to the end. Any
Okay.
comments? Is that the right thing to do?
I mean, we're going to pivot to a discussion about scope.
Yeah.
That's like a really different vein. So
Yeah.
if there's comments about the design or your takeaways from the community meeting, happy to discuss those now.
I just think that the most important part of what we've just gone over is the whole reusing of properties, meaning the salt marsh, which kind of fell apart at town meeting indirectly with the Island Home, which nobody really understands. These kind of things have to be, I'm not sure how this would work, but plugged into the explanation. Okay, with the stormwater, with the changes in whether it's on the land bank lot piece or the salt marsh lot, and listening to the people talking about uses of benches. We talked about that last year. I can say that now, last year, because it's been a while since we've met.
Yeah.
And that we talked about that is people like to sit off the like at the Easy Street thing. That's a great setup, and people enjoy that.
Yeah.
And that's the model we need to have. I do understand why people are concerned about bikes, and I'm not really sure what the answer is to that. I mean, bikes are going to inevitably be on this structure if and when it's done. I think the width of it is key, and keeping people away from that part and having places to sit that are away from where I don't like to use the word traffic, but whatever we're going to call it, whether it's walking, whether it's bikes.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is to that. I think that's a good problem. That's not a bad thing. We just have to figure that out.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thanks, Nat. Okay.
Yeah.
Should we keep rolling to the scope discussion, or is there any other comments?
Matt, you're doing a good job too. He always does.
Like the affirmation today. Thank you. Okay. So we also took a look, given the slight pause in the schedule, about how this can lay out moving ahead. I think, unfortunately, since we didn't have a quorum a couple of weeks ago, we're actually sliding this whole thing out a bit, where this sort of feasibility and assessment will be sliding out to, we're in July now, so somewhere in July, assuming everything moves ahead. But just a reminder of where we've been. So we did community engagement beginning last summer. About this time last summer, we held a focus group discussion with abutters and neighbors in person, as well as a public workshop in the Whaling Museum in August. That was really great to get feedback about how people envisioned using the space, what they'd like to see in the future. Then we went into pre-design, which was more site investigations, understanding things like what are the sort of structural, needs as we build a boardwalk on the site, what are the sort of groundwater conditions, all of these that will be informing the design. Then we spent time from November through about March developing those conceptual alternatives that we just looked at that were shared at the public meeting. And then we've had a pause. And so where we are looking to pick up soon is to go into a more detailed assessment of the feasibility of different sort of expressions of this dune berm structure that I think Todd and his team can talk more about. We're also going to be looking in more detail at stormwater and coastal flooding modeling to ensure that the designs that we're proposing are going to be effective to meet the goals that we've set out for the project. Once those things are confirmed, we will move into a phase of schematic design. It's about 16 weeks, where we will advance the sort of hardlining and detailing of the design and create a document set that can be priced and that can be advanced in future design phases should it move ahead. At the end of the schematic design, we are also delivering a benefit cost analysis which will compare the cost of the project with the potential cost savings and improvements that can happen by its construction, and also developing an operations and maintenance guide that will help with things like longer term maintaining of the plantings, of the sort of sand and dune structure, and understanding based on the modeling what we anticipate the ongoing maintenance needs to be. So we can lay that out for the town and the land bank. So what we've done, I think you all, or many of you, are familiar with the scope that we had previously. Based on where we were in the project and feedback from the town and the land bank and this committee, we've made some tweaks just to optimize really what the project needs. So the things in pink are the things that are, sort of modified or new. The things that are in this teal blue were already a part of our scope. And so pre-design remains mostly the same, but we have expanded and actually already completed some additional stormwater analysis with our partners at Hazen and Sawyer. They performed a drainage area delineation, calculated rainfall runoff volumes for some various rain events, really just to understand the capacity of the site that we have to manage stormwater and help give us guidance around really how the space needs to be designed in order to optimize what it can do to contribute to stormwater flooding. We know it's not going to solve all of the problems in this area, but it can contribute. There had initially been an order of magnitude costing that looked backwards at a previous design to get a sense of the cost. We decided not to do that. We're doing it later. Once the schematic design is complete, it felt more useful at that stage, given that we've moved beyond the previous design. In our schematic design phase, again, the things in pink are new. So we've already done these sketch design alternatives. We are onboarding the coastal engineering team, which is Todd and his team at PAR. We will refine the concept design based on the technical findings, as well as sort of your feedback given the community responses that we received. And then we are also adding a stormwater modeling component that includes developing an integrated model of the project to evaluate basically the potential to manage stormwater water under several climate change scenarios. And so we really want to understand, again, if we're investing in stormwater infrastructure, how much is it contributing, and is it kind of worth the investment? We also removed lighting and electrical design from the schematic design documents. We felt in conversation with this group and the staff that was not necessary at this time. The benefit cost analysis scope remains the same. We will be doing the sort of standard FEMA benefit cost analysis tool. And then there's also going to be an expanded qualitative benefits assessment. And I'll just say that, because this is envisioned as a piece of a whole, thinking about a whole kind of park and dune system that could be built out over time, this first segment may have more limited benefit, but it has other sort of qualitative benefits that we want to capture. So we don't know exactly what that will say, but that is part of the analysis that will come. Oops. And then we're developing a technical memo that will document the frequency and cost of operations and maintenance that are anticipated with the proposed project. I think a component of that will also be the land bank and the town working together to understand the maintenance process moving ahead, since this is a little bit of a new model. And then our community engagement component is complete. We've talked about those, so I won't land on them, but we've done our 2 meetings as well as focus groups and planning sessions. And then the last task is new. This is something that through the process and with you all, we've determined that it would be beneficial to have some additional coastal modeling in order to understand the sort of efficacy and impacts of the alternative designs. So Joe, do you want to just touch on what's included for this new task 6? You can probably speak to it a little better than I can.
Sure. So as Laura mentioned, there's kind of 2 tasks in front of us to evaluate this component of the larger framework. And we acknowledge that there are other potential flanking flood pathways along Washington Street and from Consu Spring. There's a time and volume calculation that could go into this, that there may be some effectiveness of this particular intervention in reducing the volume coming over onto Washington Street. Long term, when we have larger flood events, more high tide flooding, you'll need the full framework to be effective. But in the near to midterm, there is some benefit that's you know, potentially realized by just having these two lots brought up because of their more near term flood pathways. So that's the independent effectiveness portion of the coastal modeling. We'll be using the same model to assess redirected flow, which is something that the regulatory agencies will need to understand on the permit application to make sure that we're not having any unintended impacts on adjacent properties. And then we'll also be looking, again, revisiting the erosion performance modeling. So doing a cross-shore model, looking at potential waves coming across the harbor, and making sure that we're designing this to a level that can withstand a reasonable storm. And we have a plan in place to know like when we need to renourish, and that modeling will inform the renourishment, so like the maintenance plan for this project.
So that's it on our end. I can, we could either answer questions or hand it over to Todd and then talk about the two scopes collectively.
Just a couple of comments. I think
Sure.
what we're doing with the stormwater and that issue, that is other than cost, that is a large issue for the neighbors. And I think expanding the scope to address those concerns and understand that is really good. And then the part about cost benefit, I think that was task 3 or 4.
Yep.
One of the benefits I think of doing this, we have to do this right the first time. Because if we don't, it's gonna be hard to do this later.
Yeah.
And so a big benefit, even if this doesn't save everything right now, is that we're doing this right and we're setting the stage for what has to come in the future, which is crucial. And I don't know how we quantify that, whether that goes under your qualitative or, just.
That's what we're trying to capture in the qualitative, yes. Knowing it's a phased process.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'll stop my share and then turn it to Todd if you want to talk about your proposed scope.
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for inviting us to this and inviting us to participate in the team. A little background, I may have said this at the previous unofficial meeting, but I'll kind of just give it for those that weren't there. My background is I've been in waterfront coastal engineering for over 30 years now. So I've actually been involved. I was involved in this team development prior to it even being started off at my previous position at another engineering firm. So I was familiar with it during the survey part of it, as well as the initial development of that scope that was part of the original project. I have left that position a couple of years ago and joined PAR, actually where I had very early part of my career at back in the late 90s. So I've come back again to a very strong company that's much larger than it was many years ago. So I was excited to be invited back to join the team. We've done quite a bit of work with Joe and Laura and worked with the land bank. So it was good to be invited. We received the RFP that was developed by the town for these engineering services, and our proposal for those services basically just followed what was asked of us in that proposal. So our tasks align with, I'll share my screen just so that we have it to look at, I guess. you see my screen?
Yes. Although it's quite small.
Why is that small? Sorry.
I think if you just zoom in on the document, that we'll be able to read it.
Yeah, if you want to highlight the tasks.
This is, I'm apologizing for this. I don't know what's going on.
No worries.
Todd, if you just want to read through it, we have a couple
Yeah.
printed ones. If
Okay, sorry about that. I don't.
this was also in
it's
the
not-
packet, but if any of the
Yeah.
reps want to.
So we have 5 tasks. We're team meetings, which will span the 28-week process. We have a feasibility and alternatives assessment, which was basically pulling back through, since we weren't involved in the initial development, going through with the project team and evaluating what's feasible for the waterfront structures, and if there's any additional flood protection requirements that comes out of the coastal modeling that Woods Hole Group will be doing. Probably one of the most critical tasks will be the permitting feasibility assessment, where we will go through and evaluate the challenges and risk assessments with those permitting requirements and what's proposed, as this is a very unique project with a lot of components that will be a way that we're going to have to engage with the regulators to help them understand how the productive this is going to be. And it might be a little bit out of the box in some areas. So we're going to have some interactions and some ways to use the regulations to help us get this project through completion and success, and hopefully make this as one of the leading types of projects to deal with the unique flooding that Nantucket is experiencing and how we do that. So there's just going to be some challenges, I think, and that task 3 is going to kind of outline those, and will possibly help us make some decisions in the actual floodproofing and structural interaction. From there, we would go into schematic design of the waterfront structures with the team on the overall project, and we will also be supporting the preliminary construction cost for the BCA and that evaluation. So we provided our team support for that with our proposal and outlined, the schedule, and that we'll be able to meet those schedules with our team. If there's any questions on it, I'd be happy to answer.
Do you want to share about the grant for this
Ye-
one?
Sure. So, the Nantucket Land Bank, worked to receive a grant that was basically specifically either allocated to, this project or a separate project on East Creek that we're doing. And so we think it makes the most sense to use that funding to, basically expand on this permitting component of the project, because it's one of the more challenging and yet probably most important areas to have very good information about how one can build, a structural, or not even a structural, but a functional component in this area that will protect from flooding while still be permittable within the state regulations. And so, really kind of drilling down into that. And I think, and Todd has this capacity. We've worked with him in the past and been very impressed. to really explore this. So we think that this is the best use of this funding, and therefore we've decided to allocate it to this project.
And this is another example of if you get it right once, then
This is a question that if we answer here will be replicable and it's a very, very interesting question. It doesn't have an easy answer, but we're gonna work hard to come up with all the options. Right, Todd? No pressure.
No pressure, no pressure.
So. If there is nothing else, do you have anything else you want to share?
So
We
if,
will need an approval, a
Yeah.
vote, but I'm just wondering if there's anything else you want to share on this topic.
I think just that the additional, so what we're looking at is the additional allocation for the scape part,
Yes.
which is about $15,000. And again, the PAR one is covered by the grant.
Yes.
Could I just note one thing about that, Leah? So what we attempted to do was to stay within the initial number, where, for example, we took away the electrical and that additional cost estimate that weren't needed. We added the modeling. And so that slight increase is really with this new step of onboarding Todd's team and having an additional iteration of site plan that factors in that information. But we tried to keep it tight.
Thanks, Laura.
So I guess my question would be, does anyone have any questions on Scape's revised scope or the waterfront engineering scope? Because our goal today is to approve both of those so we can move forward. No question?
very clear.
Okay. Should we move forward with approvals? Leah? Yes, okay. What was that?
Were you looking for a motion?
Yes, may I please have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the new scopes and what Leah said.
Thank you. In a second, okay,
That's how you have to do it when you're a volunteer.
okay. Roll call vote, Alan Reinhardt,
Aye.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Mr. McNabb.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
And can I just make one more comment real quick?
Yes.
I just want to comment on what Matt said. When I agree with Matt Fee, I like to let people know that happens. He made a comment about doing it once. I want you all to think about that. Nothing is going to be done twice anymore. This is it. Like, you know what I mean? Like the new fire station and police station, you think we're going to build another one? No, that's not going to happen. Whatever we do down here, if it's in phases, which is probably going to be, that mindset needs to be in the forefront of everyone's mind involved in this project, that we do whatever we do first is like sort of it to the next step, without it being, well, we'll get that later. Well, as long as what we're doing is permanent the first time, then the second thing is okay. But if we're doing it, how do I say this? And I don't want to say temporary way, but in more of a multifaceted, that's why I get that Salt Marsh Center parking lot. I can't stop thinking about that. When the stormwater pumps and all the different things that were discussed at previous meetings, that is huge. And we can't lose that momentum to get these areas moved into their new phase to benefit the town. So that's just my little piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Nat. Is there anything else you'd like to share today?
The next steps will be to create the contract for PAR. And then staff will meet internally to see, because I know Todd will need some time to look over all of the data that's already been collected and get his team aligned. So we'll decide if the July 25th meeting will occur or not, based on that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Is this the official approval or is there a select board step?
So now that it's approved here, the new contract and the contract amendment for SCAPE will go to the select board on their July 23rd meeting.
Got it. Okay.
And it'll be formalized there.
Okay.
if
Thank
approved.
you.
So I ramp up my staffing and getting them ready for this, assuming it gets approved, I'll just get my project alignment August 1st as a kind of a start kickoff date would be that, like, first week of August would be reasonable, or should what would be reasonable for the follow-up after select board, just so that I can plan my team?
Yeah, August 1 sounds good. In the meantime, we'll work with finance to go over the contract, and get that prior to the July 23rd select board meeting.
Thank you.
I'm on island the week of August 4th. If
Oh.
there's anything that would be useful to either visit the site or meet with this group in person, happy to do that.
Great.
Thanks, Laura.
Sure.
Yeah, I honestly, that might not be a bad thing to do, just to
We
have
could
it there.
Plan a site visit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been 2 years since I've been there, so I wouldn't mind it, and it's in Nantucket.
You're gonna come back, Todd?
All right, we can discuss that.
Yeah,
Great.
All right,
That's it.
well, if I think that's it, I would. Are we ready to adjourn?
Unless there's any more questions, concerns, or future agenda items.
Are we ready to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. Second.
Thank you. And we've adjourned the meeting today at 11:43. Nice work, everyone. What?
Just roll call.
Oh, sorry, roll call vote. Alan Reinhardt,
Aye.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Uncle Big Nat.
Aye.
All right. Everyone's in support. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time today.
thank
Thank
very
you all
much.
very much.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Fish it.